I'm here today with Rachel Lung. She's the strength and conditioning coach for the junior team, Revelstoke Grizzlies. This is her second season. She's a physiotherapist by trade, or physiotherapist by day, strength coach at night. And your fourth year with the team, second year as strength and conditioning coach. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I want to go deep today, like pick apart all the nuts and bolts of what your experience is like as an SSC coach with a hockey team, working with 16 to 20-year-old boys and men.
Yeah.
Tell me, in the last 2 years as your time in SNC, what's the biggest thing that you've learned as a coach?
Hard-hitting first question, but I think it's been a crazy journey, like from the time that I was kind of thrown into the role. I feel like we kind of were in a place last year where we needed to get a program going that was consistent, and I seemed to be kind of like the person that was in the right place at the right time with the right interest. And so going into it, like I actually really knew not a whole lot about what I was about to get myself into, and it was kind of like being thrown to the wolves a little bit, especially in a sport that I never played growing up. So I think like the biggest thing I've learned is that you really do have to like take everything down and like unlearn a lot of things that you think you know about strength and conditioning, and kind of like build up for the specific team and the specific sport that you're working with. So obviously I've learned a lot about the demands of hockey. I've learned a lot about like the demands in the gym versus on the ice, and like how those things translate. But I think I've also learned a lot about myself as a coach in the process, and just like, you know, what kinds of things I can bring to the team that might be unique than somebody who maybe did play hockey growing up, or somebody who has been in this role for a longer time, or has even like coached hockey before. So there's a lot of things to be learned. I would say like I've learned hundreds of lessons. I think if I had to choose one thing, it's that culture always comes first. And the biggest thing there being like, you can have all of the fanciest tech that you want, and you can have all of like the highest skilled players on the team, but if your culture is not dialed, like none of it works. I think like a big thing that I've noticed working with junior hockey is guys come in at completely different levels, literally from day one. You could have a guy who's literally been training in the day every day since he was like 11. And then you could have a guy who's like basically been in the gym like, you know, a few times in his hockey career. And also you never know like if their time in the gym has been self-led or if they've been coached through proper movement patterns. So a big thing that I generally try to work on like in those first few weeks even is like, what kinds of things do we need to correct from a movement pattern standpoint that is going to set them up for success to be able to actually have the skills they're working on in the gym translate into their ice time. I'd say like from a science, that's a big thing that I always look at. And then mindset is always at the forefront. I mean, with hockey, guys are always moving too, right? And I would say like mindset is the first thing that will get you cut. It's almost like what they say in like career. It's like slow to hire, quick to fire. Like you have to be really quick to recognize the guys who have a mindset that might negatively drag the rest of the team down. It's not that you can't fix mindset, but it runs a lot deeper and it's a lot harder to coach. I think like mindset and character is a huge piece when guys come in, and like we have to make sure that not just on the ice, but in the gym, that's really dialed as well. I've had experience since being on this team where we've had, you know, athletes that we've kept on the team that have really negatively affected the mindset of guys around them as well. And accountability is probably one of the things that I see the most as contributing to someone being successful or not. Because I think when it comes down to it, like you can have the best coaches in the world and you can have like all of the resources for this person, but at the end of the day, if they aren't willing to hold themselves accountable for where their responsibility is in their own development, it's really hard to coach. They have to recognize that they play a role in their own process, and that the only person that's actually going to help them shift towards making any kind of changes themselves. You should knees out when you squat. You should do all these things. Like, what are your sleep habits like? You should stretch at night, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can talk to a guy about these things till I'm blue in the face, but at the end of the day, like, if they're not holding themselves accountable for their own progression, then they won't do any of it. They need to have that inherent belief that they are worthy of putting the effort into themselves. And if for whatever reason they've developed this belief that they can't be successful for whatever reason, or they're so afraid to fail that it limits them, then they will be their own roadblock in that process. The fear of failure is huge, especially for like young adolescent males. Like, that fear of failure is massive. And, I feel like there's definitely some instances where, well, if I don't give it my 100% and I fail, then it's okay because I didn't give my 100%.
Permission to fail.
Yeah. But I think, we really have to be able to like cultivate that kind of like safety in a culture where they feel like they have permission to make mistakes. And I think that's kind of where the accountability comes from too, because they'll be willing to be like, you know what? Yeah, I did mess up this day, or like, I could have done better that day. But I think there's definitely a roadblock there if they're going to be, if they're afraid to fail, they're never going to admit that they failed. But one of the biggest things about growing is that you have to fail. Right. And one of the biggest things about being an athlete is that failure is an inevitable part of that journey. Like, even pro hockey players miss on a shootout. Even pro hockey players take unreasonable amounts of penalties. Like, mistakes are gonna be made, and that's okay. And if an athlete has it in their mind that it's not a safe space to do that, then I don't think they'll hold themselves accountable, just because they probably don't feel safe in that.
Right. Like, they'd rather give a safe 80 than an honest 100.
100%. Because if they give an honest 100 and they still fail, then what does that mean for them? It's really important to make sure that you're always supporting your athletes in that it's okay to make mistakes. I can forgive you if you're not perfect, but what is really hard is if you don't try. And I would never expect perfection, and mistakes are allowed. That's also something that's expected. We have a common expectation as mistakes on the bottom, because it's expected that everybody at some point is going to make a mistake, and that's okay. And there's no way that we're going to like push forward towards like growth if we're not actually like pushing to the point where we're sometimes failing. Failure could mean a couple things, right? So if we're thinking about like working at a certain intensity, like, we could actually go to failure on a rep. Sometimes we encourage it and sometimes we don't, but then there's other times where we encourage it and they still don't. When it comes to failing on the rep, there's a certain amount of support that has to be like stacked with a guy. I guess we could kind of use that as an analogy too. Because you would never push a guy to failure on a bench press without having at least, like, you would have your spotter there and you'd have guys like there, like, yelling at him, encouraging him that he can get the bar up.
Right.
You're allowed to fail, but we have to like be there for each other to pick each other up when it happens. You'll see we kind of have like our rocks and our expectations that we kind of laid out at the beginning of this season here. And I would say that like failure to uphold that standard is what I would consider. Like, you obviously want guys to come in and be able to uphold the standard every day, but it's not realistic, right? So as a coach, you kind of have to come in and remind them of that standard every once in a while. We have to remember that they're humans first, not just athletes. And when it becomes a repeated thing, that's kind of when it becomes a bit of a problem. But if they need to pick me up every once in a while, or a small reminder, like, hey guys, like, are we hitting the standard today? Or where was the standard today? And just a little bit of a reminder. And it's not saying like, it's not punishing them, being like, you failed to hit the standard today, you absolutely suck, like, go the F home. It's like, we might not have hit the mark today. What can we do better tomorrow?
For the 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds who might be watching this with that low self-worth, that deep fear of failure, if you could share one piece of advice from your experience to help them overcome that, what would you say?
Find a mentor. I think that's a big piece, because the one thing that you never want to feel when you're in that journey is alone. Or not, maybe they're not a mentor, but like, find somebody to go through it with. Because at the end of the day, like, we are meant to be connected. It's no easy feat being a 14, 15, 16-year-old athlete trying to make something of yourself. There's no worse feeling than like having that low self-worth and like being so afraid of failure and then also feeling alone. I think like finding like whether it's a teammate or like find somebody on coaching staff that you trust that you can like talk to and find like people that are going to be in your corner. Everybody has their days where maybe they're not going to show up to 100%. And those are the days that we want to like lean on the people that we know are like there to support us. I always tell the guys this too, like when I think they're having a down day, I'm like, you know, if there's specific guys having a down day and other guys are doing really well, like you pick those guys up because they're going to do the same for you when you're having a bad day. And that's what being a team is about, is like really trying to make sure that like when you're falling, you're picking each other up and you're like showing up for each other when it matters. And so I think like for that young athlete who's really not sure, like don't be afraid to get somebody in your corner. And like, I can guarantee you that like, if you were to go up to somebody on coaching staff who you like trust, or, you know, go up to a teammate and be like, hey, you know what, I'm like really struggling. I'm wondering, like, can we just have like a talk about this? They are 100% going to be willing to back you on that. But I think the biggest piece is making sure you have support so you're not going it alone because it's hard.
So at the player level and at the parent level, what are some filters or questions they could ask to help understand who may be in their corner and who's not?
I think mission, vision, values is a really great thing to ask, especially if you're like scouting for a coach, right? Getting a sense of who they are as a person, not just a coach, I think is important, because I have this saying that I always say is like human first, right? Like, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, your athlete is an athlete, but they're also a human and you want someone to treat them like one too. When it comes to, you know, what to ask is like, well, what's your mission through coaching, and like what is your vision for my athlete, and what are your values? What values do you hold as a coach or as a person that like kind of guide you through your process of how you coach athletes, I guess. Because you can get a really good sense of like a person by how they answer that question. Like what are the things that they fall back on when things get tough, and at the end of the day, who are they gonna end up being when maybe things get tricky?
For a 14-year-old who maybe hasn't heard mission, vision, values,
yeah,
what are some other words that they could use to help them?
Maybe things like, why did you want to be a coach? I feel like when you are, well, this would be, for like a parent or an athlete screening for, you know, either a team or a mentor or a, you know, a trainer or something like that. Why did you want to be X? Right? Because, you know, you can tell a lot by a person too, and how they answer that is like, oh, I kind of just like fell into it. Or it's like, oh no, like I have this like deep love for like, you know, helping people achieve their full potential, whatever. Like you're going to see different sides of somebody come out when you kind of ask them like why they chose a certain path. So that's always a good one. Just like, why did you become X? Another thing that you could maybe ask would be, what are some ways in which you also take care of yourself? So I think when you're in a giving profession, and I've learned this a lot through being a physiotherapist, and like when you're in a people-facing profession where you're giving so much of yourself to help others, it's like knowing how that person also fills like themselves up and how they can show up every day will give you a sense for how sustainable that relationship will be. Right?
Right.
Because on any given day, like they could show up being like, you know, they've had, you know, their 10 hours of sleep and like they're all good to go and they've had, you know, their coffee and whatever. And then on another day they could show up having like 2 hours of sleep, and you want to know, like, are they going to like take care of themselves so that they can show up for you consistently as well?
Now, you used being thrown into something like as a counter example for maybe a less strong mission. How does that connect to your experience of feeling like you're thrown into this role as a coach?
Do you mean in terms of like, how do I feel like it's fit into what my mission is?
Yeah, with, you know, balancing the feeling of being thrown into a role just by, you know, maybe circumstance, I don't know all the details.
Yeah.
And with what you feel your true mission is. Do you feel tension there? Do you feel alignment? What's happened as this role's progressed for you?
It's a really good question. I think like I actually was okay with it because it felt so aligned. Because like I've known for a long time that like I really love working with teams in like a team environment. And maybe that's just because I was never on one. Like I did a solo sport. I was a dancer when I grew up. But I think I had expressed interest in the role like the year prior to the year that I was kind of thrown into it. You know, I'd had a meeting with the guy who was doing it at the time, and you know, everything he's saying, I'm like, wow, this just seems like exactly aligned with like what I want to do with my career. And, you know, also I feel like I have this continuous hunger for growth in myself. You know, when I was thrown in to the role, I'd say like there was a big part of me that was like absolutely terrified. But at the same time, I've learned that usually when you're really scared of something is when you're on the verge of exponential growth, right? And so I think what I've found through that experience of just like kind of being really fearful initially, but then recognizing like, okay, maybe I'm fearful because it feels like a big step in a direction that feels exciting. And so I think like I was really excited about the opportunity, but also knew that I was about to take on a lot. But I was kind of okay with it because I knew that I was going to be moving in the direction that was aligned with what my mission was, which is ultimately like to have a positive impact on athletes development. And like when you're working with a team, you just get to do that on such a larger scale on a regular basis. You're not just working like one-on-one, but like you get to have contact with, you know, the entire team multiple times a week to have like a small positive impact on them on any given day is like, you know, that contributes to my mission enough.
It fills your cup.
It fills my cup for
There
sure.
you go. Okay, so you've seen a lot of changes even last year to this year in your experience as well as your education.
Mm-hmm.
So studying for passing and now being certified with your or certified strength and conditioning specialist.
Mm.
How has that changed your coaching?
It's an interesting question because kind of like I said, I was like a little bit thrown into the role like before CSCS was even like a thing for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'd looked into it and I was like, oh, like this could be something that I would benefit from. But I think I was kind of just going based off like what I knew from a physio background and, you know, the very basic strength and conditioning stuff that we learn and what I've kind of had taught myself over the span of the years. And like I'd taken a few like performance specific physiotherapy, like strength and conditioning courses that allowed me to kind of actually be able to come in the space and not be completely lost, right? I think what I was kind of hoping to gain from CSCS, which I definitely feel has been helpful, is just gaining like that foundational knowledge and then like the confidence that what I was doing was the right thing.
Yeah.
And so I would say like I wouldn't say there's anything that's majorly changed since I started or since I passed my CSCS. But I would say like as I was studying, I would learn little tidbits here and there. Like it's actually safer for us to do a 1 rep max test than it is for us to do like, you know, as an AMRAP of a specific weight for a guy for a fitness test, and like being more comfortable pushing guys to a limit. That was definitely something that shifted, I think, for me is like I became a lot more comfortable upping the intensity because I knew that it was safe to do that with specific safety measures in place.
Right.
I think the other piece that I started programming a lot more full body sessions. And this was something we had played around with a lot, but I think for the most part, like last year we did like upper lower splits and we shifted towards doing like, we've done a lot of full body split this year, just to like allow for proper muscle group recovery and things like that. I also really liked learning about like the nutrition stuff. I felt like I could kind of like, you know, you've been super helpful with the guys, and I felt like I could kind of provide like a bit of additional support if they had more questions when you weren't around or whatnot. But so that's been helpful as well. But yeah, just like little tidbits here and there, like coaching cues, things like that. That was really helpful. And then like different tests that we can run to assess specific qualities in guys and how to know when guys are overreaching.
Right.
How to know when they're like looking overtrained, right?
Yeah.
And that was really helpful for me to start recognizing too.
What's one myth or misconception that you see in the industry or on social media that you want to take a chance to, you know, set straight or debunk?
Okay, I have two. Well, I could speak to the physio one and I could speak to the S&C one. Sure. I think the physio one, that I will go to the grave dying on this hill, like that humans are not fragile. And I think a lot of times, you know, especially in the medical world, we get treated as such. And, we get told all the time, like, you have the knees of an 85-year-old, you can never run again, you shouldn't be lifting heavy things, you shouldn't be bending forward, etc. And I'm like, you're totally dismissing the fact that the body is incredible and has the ability to adapt, right? And it will adapt to whatever stimulus you expose it to, so long as you give it the time and resources to do so. And it's really just about like finding the right point of entry, because like you can find the right point of entry and just build somebody up from there. But I think where people get in a really bad cycle is when they're told that they're fragile and then they become fearful of all movement.
Learned helplessness.
And then they're just like, oh my gosh, the doctor told me I can never lift again, so I'm just like never going to lift anything ever again. And then you de-adapt from that.
Right.
So I always try and encourage like clients that I'm working with, even like my athletes as well, is like, you are not fragile. Like your body is going to adapt, but you just have to give it the proper resources and environment to do so. So I would say that's my physio one.
Okay.
My strength and conditioning one, and this might be a bit controversial, and I actually got this from a coach that I follow on Instagram. But do you follow JT Performance on Instagram? Okay, I love his stuff. He's so funny. But I love the thing he says about like sports specific exercises are kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
I would for sure agree with him there. I feel like and that's something that I've really implemented into my coaching. Like things are super simple, right? When it comes to programming, it's like we focus on functional movement, like foundational movement patterns. There's 7, right? And we hammer those home. And that's because at the end of the day, like that's what we're doing in here. You can worry about the sport specific stuff by doing your sport.
Play your sport. Yeah, exactly.
Play your sport. That's how you get better at your sport. But right, like when you're in the gym and you're trying to build strength, like you don't need to like look like you're shooting a puck in order for it to translate to hockey.
Yeah, I know. I always love when I get the question in our messages like, do you have any goalie specific workouts? I'm like, just lift weights.
I'm like, no, you need to lift heavy shit. Just lift heavy stuff and put it back down.
Yeah.
At the right volume and intensity.
Yeah.
And recover better.
Yes. Huge.
But I think that, the sports specific exercise myth is one that I kind of giggle about, but I'll for sure die on that hill.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay. Last question. We're coming up on time here. And I'll be honest, I stole this question from Lewis Howes in the School of Greatness, if you're familiar.
I'm actually not.
Okay, so I get to blindside you on this.
No, I'm scared.
It's called The 3 Truths. So everything you've ever learned, everything you've ever shared, everything you've ever spoken is wiped away from the world. People have no access to it after you're gone. But you're allowed to leave behind 3 truths that are undeniable to you. And they can be about life, they can be about training, they can be about sports. What are your 3?
I think one of them would have to be like, you are worthy of it, and being unspecific on purpose. Because whether it's like being worthy of love, being worthy of attention, being worthy of investment, the thing is like you have to believe it in yourself before somebody else can believe it about you. That's one for sure. It's just like, I wish that every person knew that they are inherently worthy of it just because they exist, and they don't have to earn it. They don't have to earn being worth it. And that also comes down to the accountability piece we spoke. Like you are worthy of pouring everything you have into yourself to make yourself better. Like this is one that me and my friends always say to each other. We work out together in the mornings and do really hard workouts, and it's insane and also super fun, but we always like yell this to each other at the gym, and that's like, you can do hard things. And this has kind of like been buzzing around a lot, but like it's something that I like say in this gym a lot too, is don't be mad at it because it's hard. Like you can do it. Yeah. And I say this to the guys too. I'm like, we don't push you because we're trying to be mean. We don't push you because we are trying to make you suffer. We push you because we know that you are capable of achieving a really high standard. And we know that you're capable of doing something hard. And, it might feel hard right now, but that doesn't mean you can't do it.
Yeah.
So you can do hard things. That's another one. Yeah, I think you can always count on you. So you have to make sure that you take care of yourself, as though like when times get tough and you're falling back on yourself, like you're going to create that home as like a comfy place that you can come back to at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, like you are the only person who's ever going to push yourself to do hard things, or you are the only one who's ever going to like actually take those steps towards changing habits. Like it's only ever going to be you that makes that decision. So make sure that you're taking care of you as a home, because like shit's gonna get tough and you're gonna have to come back home, and if you don't like where you live, that's not gonna be that fun.
Yeah.
Right? So I think like care for yourself as though you are a home, and make sure that you like where you live, because like that's where you're going to draw strength from when things get really hard.
Mhm.
And like everything else could change in an instant, but the one thing that isn't going to change is that sense of you and that sense of self. So just like finding that confidence and that like really strong inner peace definitely helps to like push you forward into things that feel uncomfortable, because you know you always have a home.
I feel like it's a horribly abused cliche, but it's like the body is a temple. And it's like when you say like true like inner peace, it's like that's where I think of like the actual temple side of it.
Totally. I agree. I think, yeah, like I always like to think of it as just like a cozy little home. You want to make sure you're cleaning up.
Yeah.
Right? If you're just like throwing shit everywhere, it's just not gonna it's not gonna be that comfy to come back to.
True. Yeah. I know that. My wife knows that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's
Yeah.
been great.
Thanks for having me. It's
Yeah.
been awesome.